Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. This evening, I want to talk about the Mūlapariyāya Sutta, first sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. It's a very interesting sutta in a number of ways. It's one of the more philosophical suttas. It's perhaps a bit difficult at first reading, and I've wondered how many people are discouraged from trying to read the Majjhima Nikaya by starting with the first sutta and giving up. But it touches on a number of very important points. It deals with the mental processes of perceiving and what the English translation calls conceiving, which we'll talk about, and understanding and fully understanding and so on. And it also deals with these in the different ways that an unenlightened person, a person with a partial enlightenment, and a Buddha or an Arahant and a Buddha, so 4 different kind of levels of understanding. The Buddha gave this sutta to a group of bhikkhus who the commentary identifies as being mostly Brahmins who had previously been very educated in and steeped in Brahmanical lore and philosophy. And that was part of the reason the Buddha gave the sutta to this particular group, was to shake them out of their entrenched views. So I'll go through the sutta. It's sort of long, but a lot of it's repetition, and I'll kind of skip the repetitions. And I'll stop here and there to comment on it. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living in Ukata in the Subhaga Grove at the root of a royal sal tree. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Blessed One said this: Bhikkhus, I shall teach you a discourse on the root of all things. That's what Mūlapariyāya means, the root of all things. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, the bhikkhus replied. The Buddha said this. The first section deals with the mental processes of an ordinary person. And here, bhikkhus, an untaught ordinary person who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in the Dhamma, and has no regard for true men and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma. So he's kind of defining in someone who's outside of the Dhamma. But what an untaught ordinary person refers to is a patujana, which means the many folk. It's one of the instances of the Buddha using a term from the existing culture and giving it a kind of a new spin or a new technical meaning. Patujana in the ordinary sense outside of Buddhist discourses means a commoner, as opposed to a nobleman. And in the technical sense as used by the Buddha, it refers to anyone who has not yet attained to stream entry. They're the commoners, or the many folk. And anyone who's attained stream entry or higher is also given the term from the culture as being called araya, or noble. So he gives a new meaning to noble and commoner. Here the ordinary untaught person, etc., perceives earth as earth. And the verb used is sanjati, which is the verbal form of sanya, which is one of the 5 aggregates, the aggregate of perception. And it's very important to understand the nature of perception and what is meant to perceive. When consciousness takes an object, it's very simple and immediate. It's just that the data from the outside world striking the sense organ and then being realized in the mind. But then it's only perceived or made something of by this mental processing called perception. The example that's usually given is to take the eye sense. The eye doesn't see, there's an apple on the table and you look at the apple, eye consciousness doesn't see an apple. It sees red and round. And perception then recognizes and calls it an apple and sees an apple. So perception is has a creative aspect. So the Patujana perceives earth as earth. Now he's talking about earth element. Having perceived earth as earth, so from perception, and this is an immediate perception of earth element, he conceives himself as earth, or he conceives himself in earth, or he conceives himself apart from earth, or he conceives earth to be mind, and he delights in earth. Why is that? Because he has not fully understood it, I say. So this passage is very close to the 4 ways, in another sutta, the 4 ways in which we create the illusion of a self. We can take any of the 5 aggregates, such as the body, and say, I am the body, or I am in the body, or the body is in me, or the body is mine. And this is comes to 20 ways because it's multiplied by the 5 aggregates. And here a very similar formula is given to an external object. And this is done by a process subsequent to perceiving. This is called conceiving, from the verb manyati, as a translation of the verb manyati, which means it's something like thinking, but it's always used in a kind of pejorative sense, as being like false thinking or making things up in your mind. So he conceives himself as earth, or he conceives himself in earth, or he conceives himself apart from earth, or he conceives earth to be mind. He delights in earth. So these are ways in which a self is referenced in relation to an external object. You either perceive yourself as the object, or it belongs to you, or you're apart from it, but in some way you make a conception, a thought formation that identifies a self and other. And delighting in earth is in giving in to the sense of desire. And then it goes through a very long list of other factors in which one can do this same process. The next one is, it goes through the elements first. So the next one is water. Having perceived water as water, he conceives himself as water, etc. It goes through exactly the same formula. And then with fire, then with air, then beings. He perceives beings as beings. Having perceived beings as beings, he conceives beings, or manyati. He creates mental formations around the idea of beings. external beings, humans, animals, devas, whatever. And he conceives himself in beings, apart from beings. He conceives beings as mind. He delights in beings. Why is that? Because he has not fully understood it, I say. Then goes through lists of various classes of beings. He perceives devas as devas. He perceives Pajapati as Pajapati. That's a little bit of a curious one. That comes up in some of these lists. It's not really, Pajapati is not really a major figure in the Buddhist cosmology. He's sometimes mentioned as one of the devas without any detail. But he was in earlier Vedic conception, he was a very important deva. And in some versions of the Vedic creation myth, there's more than one version. In one version, he's the creator god. And in another version, he's the sacrificial victim, in which was sacrificed to create the world, and his various body parts became like mountains and rivers and so on. And recall here that the Buddha is speaking to an audience of Vedic Brahmins, so he's referencing their cosmology, their mythology here. Also in this next paragraph, he perceives Brahma as Brahma, and so on. Then he goes through the various levels in the Buddhist cosmology, higher than the level of the first Brahmas. The Abhasara beings, or the gods of streaming radiance. The Subhakina Brahmas, or the gods of refulgent glory, to use the Bhikkhu translations here. And the Vehapala Brahmas, or the gods of great fruit. Then he throws in another one that's referencing Vedic conceptions or Brahmanical conception. He perceives the overlord as the overlord. That's the Abhibhu, the supreme god. It's just a kind of generic name for supreme god. And then he goes through the Arupa realms. He perceives the base of infinite space as the base of infinite space, then infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. Then he goes through the senses. He perceives the seen as seen. He perceives the heard as heard. He perceives the sensed as sensed. Then he perceives the cognized as cognized. Having perceived the cognized as cognized, he conceives himself as the cognized. He conceives himself in the cognized. He conceives himself apart from the cognized. He conceives the cognized to be mind. He delights in the cognized. Why is that? Because he has not fully understood it, I say. And that formula is repeated for each of these multitude of different factors. He perceives unity as unity, or the allness of all, is another way this has been translated. And this is probably a reference to the Upanishadic view, which was a later development, still pre-Buddhist, but a later development out from the Vedic view. The Upanishads had the most sophisticated philosophy before the Buddha, and their view was that there is only, it's sometimes called one mind. There's only Brahma, and all separate beings are essentially Brahma looking out of different windows. That all beings share one mind, and it's so that it's sometimes described as Brahma is the same as Atta, or Atta is Brahma. I've recently heard somebody speculate that this view might have arisen from yogis who attain to the base of infinite consciousness. And this is the way they would perceive that, which is the third of the arupa, no, or it's the second of, yes, the second of the arupa jhanas. There's the base of infinite space, then the base of infinite consciousness. And someone who attains to that without understanding the theory might develop an idea of the one mind. But still, from the Buddhist point of view, that's still a kind of a self view. It's just a really big self. And the next one is the opposite. He perceives diversity as diversity. So first was unity, he perceives unity, then he perceives diversity is another way of perceiving reality. So there's either, and this we see this in a lot of philosophies in India and also in later times in Europe, between philosophies that are monistic and philosophies that are pluralistic. And the commentary makes a distinction here between the perception of unity and the perception of diversity, as between someone who has experienced jhana and someone who hasn't. And this is because the mind in jhana has attained to an internal unity, ekagata, the mind that's gone to oneness. The mind is unified, whereas the ordinary mind before jhana, the ordinary mind is situated in the kama bhumi, the level of sense experience, which is the most diverse level. It's the class that's the lowest level, but it's the most diverse in that there's the most variability. Whereas in the higher levels of consciousness, it's more unified. There's less fragmentation. Then he perceives all as all. And finally, the last one in the whole list is he perceives nibbana as nibbana. And the commentary makes the point here that we're not talking about nibbana strictly in the Buddhist sense. It does also occur in for example, the Brahmajala Sutta, as one of the false views is the false view of nibbana here and now, which is the view that nibbana is being used. The word nibbana or nirvana was used in pre-Buddhist discourse to simply mean the highest possible state, and the Buddha gave it a particular definition as the unconditioned, and that which is beyond all conditioned things. But to the understanding of many other Indians, it would be the supreme conditioned existence, like the highest heaven or the greatest possible bliss. And nibbana here and now means that one experiences, complete happiness within the realm of the senses, which is not nibbana in the Buddhist sense. So he perceives nibbana as nibbana. Having perceived nibbana as nibbana, he conceives himself as nibbana. He conceives himself in nibbana. He conceives himself apart from nibbana. He conceives nibbana to be mine. He delights in nibbana. Why is that? Because he has not fully understood it, I say. Well, even taking the Buddhist definition of nibbana, then if anyone would conceive these relationships to nibbana, then they're missing it. They don't understand the nature of nibbana. If they conceive nibbana as being themselves or in themselves or apart from themselves or as mind, there's still a reference of self and other. There's still conditionality being applied to the unconditioned. So this ends the section dealing with the mental processing of a ordinary person, a patujana. And then the Buddha talks about the seka, is the word used in Pali, which means student. and this is a term that student or the learner, it's often translated, this is a technical term to refer to someone who has one of the first three of the four stages of enlightenment. There are four stages of enlightenment or awakening, beginning with the stream entry. The Sotapanna is the lowest and the first. And then there's the Sakadagami, the once returner, the Anagami, the non-returner, and the Arahant is one who's fully enlightened. So someone who has attained one of those first three stages has had some experience of Nibbana, but it's not fully understood it or fully entered into it. Sotapanna is considered to be the opening of the Dhamma eye and can be just the merest glimpse of Nibbana. And there's subsequent deeper understanding and penetration with each stage until the Arahant fully immerses and fully understands the nature of the unconditioned. So someone who is a Seka, the Buddha says this about their way of perception. Someone who is in the higher training, whose mind has not yet reached the goal, meaning arahantship, and who is still aspiring to supreme security from bondage, directly knows earth as earth. Having directly known earth as earth, he should not conceive himself as earth. He should not conceive himself in earth. He should not conceive himself apart from earth. He should not conceive earth to be mine. He should not delight in earth. Why is that? So that he may fully understand it, I say. So this is interesting to point out the differences in this formula from the one for the Punnadhammo. So beginning with the perception, instead of perceiving earth, he directly knows earth, which does not imply, as it becomes clear from the ending of the paragraph, does not imply a full understanding. But directly knowing is different from perceiving. And the commentary expands on this by relating it to the experience of knowing directly the three characteristics of dukkha, anicca, anatta, imperfection or suffering, impermanence, and emptiness or not self. It's described in the Visuddhimagga about the process of attaining to the stream, that it's done through a direct penetration of one of these three characteristics. That when one of these characteristics is known fully, then it allows one to transcend the conditioned and experience the unconditioned. It's also often noted that anatta, or not self, or emptiness, sunya, the more general principle, is not possible to be fully understood by a Punnadhammo. That it can be approached with the intellect, but it's only understood properly or completely by someone who's at least a stream winner. Even then, it's not a full understanding, but it's directly known, or the meaning has become more clear. There is a benefit and to attempting to understand it with the mind and studying and making an effort, that the intellect will approach closer to it, but then and that helps to make that final leap and experience it directly. So there's a direct knowing of these elements, and this goes through the whole list, that whole long list that I did before. Each one is given this same formula. And having directly known, then in the previous one he said he conceives himself in earth, etc. Here he says he should not conceive himself on earth, because someone who's a Seka, who's got this kind of partial, what we might call partial enlightenment, they're still prone, they're beyond, that they've broken the fetter of personality view, Sakaya Ditti, but they're still prone to the defilements of mana, conceit, and of craving. And this is what's mentioned in the commentary here. And this relates to, it's another interesting parallel or important parallel here to kind of three levels of self-making and their subsequent the overcoming these levels. Sakaya Ditti is said to occur at the level of cognition. This is the level of self-view that is overcome by stream entry. That the stream winner can no longer believe in a self. It's no longer possible. That the view is cleared. Ditti, the view. So it's another name for stream entry is purification of the view. So that it's no longer possible for a stream winner to believe in a self. It becomes a nonsensical concept. But he still has not overcome two more subtle kinds of self-making. One is the kind of self that's based on craving. So a stream winner might, which we could be called, crudely, we could relate that to simple selfishness, right? So, a stream winner doesn't believe in me, but he might still want the last cookie on the tray for me. This is, the difference here. And then the most subtle form of self-making is only overcome by the Arahant. So even the Anagami is still subject to the one based on asmi mana, which is translated generally as the I am conceit. And it's defined according to, or it's generated according to perception, not conception. So it's deeper. It's a perception of self. In a sense, it's like taking a privileged view. It's a lack of the relativity. It's a seeing that the universe is centered here. And there's a sense of self and other in the way the world is perceived. So it's a more subtle kind of self-making than Sakaya Ditti. The word asmi mana, the I am conceit, that's actually a neat translation because it catches a kind of double meaning. A conceit in English has, first of all, it has the meaning of someone who's conceited, right? Thinks highly of themselves. But it also has the meaning of a groundless notion, right? You see, he has a conceit about this or that. There's maybe a kind of a more old-fashioned use of the word, but it does have that meaning. It's also said that in talking about the I am conceit, a point that's worth pondering here is that it's defined as having three possible ways of expression. One is, I am better than you, or I am superior to you. The second way is, I am lesser than you, I am inferior to you. And the third way is, I am equal to you. And all three of these are considered as false notions. They're conceits. So the stream winner and the other next two stages, the Buddha is speaking directly to them, is advising them that they should not conceive themselves in earth. In terms of the Patujan, he's saying that they do conceive themselves in earth. You know, they're gonna do it anyway. These Patujanas, they don't know any better. But a Sotapanna, it might do it, but the Buddha's telling them, you know, don't do it. You should make an effort. This is the effort you should make. Don't conceive yourself. Don't give in to these higher forms of self-making, or the deeper forms, perhaps we should say, of self-making. He should not delight in earth. Why is that? So that he may fully understand it, I say. You know, if he gives up these forms, if he works to give up these forms of self-making, he may attain to the full knowledge and become an arahant. So that was earth, and then he goes through again water, fire, all the rest. You know, this whole long list, gods and so on, and all, and unity, diversity, and allness of all. Then the next section is dealing with the arahant. Bhikkhus, a bhikkhu who is an arahant, with taints destroyed, who has lived the holy life, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, reached the true goal, destroyed the fetters of being, and is completely liberated through final knowledge. And that's a definition that's often given. It's kind of a stock formula definition of arahant. He directly knows earth as earth, same as the Seka. Having directly known earth as earth, he does not conceive himself. So he's no longer telling you should not. He's saying no, he doesn't. Now he's done with that. He doesn't conceive himself as earth, does not conceive himself in earth, does not conceive himself apart from earth, does not conceive earth to be mine. He does not delight in earth. Why is that? Because he has fully understood it, I say. Then there's because he wants to make some further points. He goes through that same whole list again for the arahant 3 more times to make a different point each time. A bhikkhu is an arahant, etc., directly knows earth as earth, etc. He does not delight in earth. Why is that? Because he is free from lust through the destruction of lust. And the word translated as lust here is raga, which is more generally translated as passion. And it has a place in the, where the negative form of it is viraga, the destruction of passion, has a place in the sequence leading to liberation. You know, it's that the raga, this passion in its most fundamental sense, is the driving energy that keeps the mind craving after the next object. And it's when that is destroyed or cut off, is kind of means like cutting, you know, the cutting off of viraga, cutting off of raga, viraga, allows the mind to slip free of the process and realize nibbana. But the arahant has done that, so he is free from raga through the destruction of raga. And then he goes in the next sections, he does the same thing but with the other defilements, root defilements. Why is that? Because he is free from hate through the destruction of hate, or dosa, the root defilement of ill will, or negativity. And again, the third root. Why is that? Because he is free from delusion through destruction of delusion. And each of these sections is, if all the repetitions are written out, it goes through that whole long list each time. Then he deals with the Tathagata. The Tathagata means the Buddha, the fully enlightened Buddha. Tathagata is a word that's got a kind of a bit of wordplay built right into it, because it can be read as meaning either the thus gone one or the thus come one. This is a feature of Pali is compound words that sometimes are ambiguous and depend how you parse them. So depending how where you put where you take that long A in the middle of the Tathagata, it could mean either the one who has come or the one who has gone. Bhikkhus, the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened, directly knows earth as earth. Having directly known earth as earth, he does not conceive himself as earth. He does not conceive himself in earth. He does not conceive himself apart from earth. He does not conceive earth to be mine. He does not delight in earth. Why is that? Because the Tathagata has fully understood it to the end, I say. And here's the only difference from an Arahant. The Arahant has fully understood it. The Tathagata has fully understood it to the end. Which the commentary, this explanation for that difference is that an Arahant has fully understood many formations, but a Buddha has understood all formations. So the understanding, however we take it, I think the general meaning is that the understanding of an Arahant and of a Buddha is the same, but the Buddha's is more complete, broader, or more universal. And then there's one more section on the Tathagata. And it goes through that formula, then it comes to he does not delight in earth. Why is that? Because he has understood that delight, that's Nandi, has understood that delight is the root of suffering, and that with being as condition there is birth. This is dependent origination, and that for whatever has come to be, there is aging and death. Therefore, bhikkhus, through the complete destruction, fading away, cessation, giving up, and relinquishing of cravings, the Tathagata has awakened to supreme full enlightenment, I say. And again, water, fire, all the rest. Then so that whole long formula is repeated, umpteen times. In the text, as I have it here in this book, that it's just done with kind of brackets, and repetition is indicated but not printed out. Then the final line of the sutta: this is what the Blessed One said, but those bhikkhus did not delight in the Blessed One's words. And I think it's the only sutta in the canon, I believe it's the only one that ends that way. If it's not the only one, it's extremely rare. The common formula is the bhikkhus delighted in the Blessed One's words. That here they did not delight. So all these sort of trumped up Brahmin philosophers who were kind of had their noses put out of joint by this sutta. They didn't like having their philosophical presumptions kind of challenged in this way. The commentary goes on to state that the same group then listened to another discourse of the Buddha sometime later, and they all became arahants. But at this point in time, at any rate, they did not delight in the Blessed One's words. So that's the Mūlapariyāya Sutta, and it's as I said, it's an interesting one from a number of angles. It deals with mental processing and separates the ways of, or distinguishes the ways of mental processing between a Patujjana, a Seka, an Arahant, and a Tathagata. And that long list in itself has a number of interesting angles to it in reflecting both the pre-Buddhist and the Buddhist conceptions of the world and the universe. So I'll leave those words here and can continue with questions after we get the tea rolled out.
Andaman Dhammakata Sadhukaram Dadamase Sadhu Sadhu